The history of Fantastic Ibiza back then in 1988, the summer of love, the dance culture, acid house, warehouse, wherever you want to call it back then. But we were deeply involved in this whole revolution of dance music. The first ever hardcore rave Fantastic Ibiza, me and Patrick Mad P, we done our first rave at this place in Stoke Newington behind the BB petrol station. And at the time, there was only two guys running the rave scene at the time. There was Genesis, a guy called Dave Roberts, and also a guy called Wayne Anthony, who's formerly known as Genesis, or you want to call him Sunrise. And we were emulating them. We was following them up and down the country, and we decided to form our own Fantastic Ibiza London. And we were the first to take on a rave in King's Cross, 1989 Goods Way, and had a venue for 4 weeks on the trot. And we really made history that time. 3,000 people inside, 3,000 people outside. And that made me continue doing the rave. After a while, the police were all onto us and they started to shut us down.
This is the information center. This is the information center.
Jungle will take hold of every British city that's f***ed up with people that might not have much in life.
This is the information center.
The journey of jungle music began with the notorious Ibiza Records, with label head honcho Paul Chambers, also known as Paul Ibiza, launching his club brand Jungle Splash, which started right at the beginning of the 90s decade and still continues today, pulling in generations of true junglists at each event from the beginning, which provided a platform for the future rising jungle soldiers like Potential Bad Boy, DJ Brocky and MC Det, Junior Dangerous, Kenny Ken, Shabba, Fivo, and the list goes on and on across the most established venues, turning them all into a jungle haven with full-on decor changes, like the first to bring in the army camouflage nets to a large lifestyle planes to add to the jungle experience in that venue that carried on through decades of time with jungle raving.
And that's when Ibiza Record was formed. A lot of people didn't realise that I was a DJ called DJ Static alongside Mad P, my brother. Patrick used to MC, I used to DJ. A lot of the youths of the M25 never saw it before, never seen an MC before. So doing all these things, it was fascinating for them more than us because it's our culture. So we're doing what we normally do if we was in the dance anyway, regardless if it was a reggae dance, soul dance, whatever. We would just continue doing what we've always been doing. It's our culture. So when the old people got onto me and realised that I was running all these parties up and down the country, they started to shut me down all over the place. And I had enough of this getting shut down by the old bills. So I said to myself, you can stop the rave, but you can't stop the vinyl. And a lot of people realised what I was talking about. I knew I was going to start making music, and Ibiza Records was formed.
Hardcore and jungle techno was born in the UK in the early part of the 90s, and for the ongoing questions where, it was London City. North London, to be precise, has the genre's roots, from the sped up breakbeat and the chipmunk style samples and heavy piano riffs from hardcore with its uplifting sound. Through that came the combined elements with black music culture, hip-hop breakbeats, heavily influenced with ragga dancehall from the Caribbean islands, mixed with heavy dominated bass patterns that came out from sound system culture before hardcore, which gave birth to the magical sound that we now know as jungle music.
Back to the great songwriters like Duke Wellington. He had a track called Jungle Money, and 1930s called Jungle Jazz, and James Brown came out with Jungle Groove in 1975. You had the Jungle Brothers. So the jungle's in our DNA. When we was in the studio, me and Jane from Noise Factory, we looked down on the floor looking at this album, and we just sampled it, but we didn't realise what was on the front of the album cover, and then we saw it. Jungle. We saw Jungle Groove by James Brown. So that's where it really came from, within us. But at the same time, we had people at the farm called Jungleism. jungle in Broadwater Farm. So, you know, that's where the stem, the jungle, it's just in the black community as how we are, because in Jamaica, you got jungle, you know, Tivoli Garden, jungle. It's just in our DNA. So the word jungle, yes, it came from North London on a musical term, but I'm not going to claim that when it's been around in the music world, people like Jungleism, James Brown, etc., etc. So it's in our DNA. So that's where the word jungle came from.
Jungle Techno was the first label. The sounds began with a set of producers under the label synonymous with the new craze, which faster became the sound of the streets of London, eventually leaving hardcore to its own lane and developed a new one through Ibiza Records.
Mad P branched off with Mikey B and JCK and formed a thing called Top Buzz. So they were doing pretty well up the north, bringing that culture, that London vibes up into the Midlands. Patchy was MCing, Mikey B was a DJ, JCK the DJ, and their nickname was Two Blacks and the Bubble, and they were really doing well. And how Ibiza became so powerful is because I was making dub plates personally for them. And you know, they got all my dubs, they got all the Ibiza dubs long before anybody else was getting them, and they were just breaking new ground. The new London sound was getting promoted up in the Midlands, and the jungle sound was just getting stronger and stronger, and the jungle techno, you know, Patchy was saying jungle techno, I was making jungle techno tunes. So the whole jungle format came from North London, and it basically came from me and my brother.
A clear indicator for the scene growing was with the sounds of Ibiza Records, heavily supported by all London pirates at the time. So it was inevitable to have a brand like Jungle Splash, which had a direct connection to the people, the style of clothing.
The clothes, designing of most things, designing of the label, the production, bringing in the tanks, the planes. These are the things we had to do because none of this stuff was around. We had to make it all ourselves, the camouflage nets. All this stuff that you see in the raves today, we brought it to the rave game. Argument done.
And the attention to non-conforming ways made for an electric atmosphere of like-minded people raving in thousands to this hybrid sound, which was taking over with Jungle Splash being the event that you can rely on.
When I done the first jungle rave, a lot of people said, Paul, what you doing? I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? He goes, why are you showing them? Because why not? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to all these hardcore raves dominated by white kids. What about our black kids? Don't they want to listen to some music and have something of their own? And that's why I done Jungle Splash, because I've realised a lot of people were sort of keeping the ghetto kids out of it, or the inner cities out of it, and making sure that M25 outside London are getting the jungle. But I said, nah, it's not happening. Also a hint why that record came out. Not tonight, you're not coming in. So a lot of the black kids were getting turfed away from clubs up and down the country, and now God, nah, I had enough of this. So we set up this thing called Jungle, and history is history.
Let's go!
What did jungle music mean to me? Well, it was a spin-off from where I was from, innit? Because jungle heavily, for me, heavily sampled dancehall reggae, innit? And I was a dancehall artist from 86. When I heard jungle for the first time and heard 5-0 and Moose going on with things, I was like, wow, this is what we do over dance music. I heard hardcore before that. One or two tunes to that, I ain't gonna lie, like the theme, to them tunes I did like Camden Palace on a Friday night. But you know, that wasn't my thing, but I enjoyed it, I ain't gonna lie. But when the jungle music hit me and I got an invitation to be on a big jungle rave, like Jungle Splash, brother, I was over the moon. Me and my right hand man at the time was called MC Shabba. Yeah man, I couldn't hesitate to be on that because it was like a new energy to what was original to me, like the dancehall ragga.
Also, why I set up the Ibiza Records, we never had nothing for our own. We grew up in the Thatcher era where there was unemployment, no work, nothing for the inner city kids. So we had to form something for ourselves. So I set up my own label called Ibiza Records and just done my own thing. And you know, other people in the ghetto done the same thing and followed suit. Why you think you got other labels like Third Party, like Reinforce, like Real to Real. I mean, these are the labels were around owned by black guys in the inner city, and that's the reason why I done my own thing.
Jungle.
The first jungle tune was on Ibiza called Jungle Techno in 1991 by Noise Factory and myself. Noise Factory started here at Ibiza Records with only me and James at the time, and he brought in Terry T and Kevin. Done about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 releases on Ibiza, and then went off and done things on Third Party under the Noise Factory banner.
To some, the outlet was music creation, whilst some was in a criminal state of mind. And then there was the 9-to-5 work process. This label had the ideas to combine their sound system influences, dominated by reggae, dancehall, lovers rock and soul music. And the sheer genius was to add a faster pace to the music they grew up with, intricately producing this altogether, which gave a soul or smooth angle. But the frustrations of perhaps not having much was converted through the technology of the time, but the outcome was phenomenal.
So it's in our DNA, like I said earlier, and that's why jungle always re-emerge when it comes to black people, when we come with new music or we invent something and it's got that vibes, you know. So surely when I pass away, someone else gonna come up with a new terminology jungle, but it's gonna come from the black scene. It won't come from it won't come from the white side. It will automatically come from the black side.
After consciously wanting the need for black music to evolve through the hardcore sound, Ibiza Records was formed by Paul Chambers, Paul Ibiza, based in North London.
A lot of people believe jungle was 94, but really it was 91. As Ibiza started to develop its style, its pattern, knew what he was doing for the last 5 years, right up to say 93, going into 94, London took a different direction. Jungle became something different now. You have Jenny Levy, you have Congo Nutty, you have other labels springing up, bringing the word jungle into a different direction. So it was more of a rugged jungle, and it started to hit the charts, and you got Jetstar and things like that. So the whole jungle completely changed from jungle techno to a word called jungle. So Top Buzz was like slightly different. They kept to the hardcore scene, they kept to the old flavors, while jungle was running on a completely different vibration. So that's when Jungle Splash was formed, to sort of contain that different vibration, what was happening in London.
And the set of close friends like Potential Bad Boy, Noise Factory, Chatter B and more created that sound that was to become the source of power that spawned not only a new genre of music, but a new culture that the youths of the ghetto and the underprivileged generations in the 80s going through to the 90s could all relate to. Rebellious music from the inner city came a genre that reflected the sign of times.